Good morning, everyone. Happy F3. This is Faith Suggs and Shafer Suggs. We are Faith Family Focus. If you're new to us, say hello. I am a former Duke women's basketball graduate and as well as director of basketball operations in Brooklyn, New York, and social media manager for Long Island University women's basketball. And this wonderful man, my father, is a former NFL player with the New York Jets and Cincinnati Bengals and serves as the executive board and VP of the NFLPA of Chicago. Good morning. Good morning.
Good, good morning, Faith Suggs. How are you?
Good. A wonderful Wednesday, nice hump day. Halfway through the week, everyone. We're almost there. Great. Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. What's new, Dad? What's going on? I know we just got the
Oh,
news before the show.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. Not just the obvious stuff, but there's this huge announcement we'll talk a little bit about. But looks like the Big Ten is going to come back into play. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm excited about today's topic. There's so much that we can talk about, but we'll touch on that, and then we're going to touch on something that's also pretty um, in the public eye is this remote learning and the pressure that a lot of these parents are putting on administrators to get their kids back to school, which has been a tremendous amount of frustration. So we'll kind of talk through that a little bit too. But other than that, it's Wednesday. Of course, I have my workout after this. Um, this whoa, you so what?
Yeah, we today's Wednesday. We welcome back everyone to the FA family. If you're new, say hi, shoot us a wave, shoot us a like. Our goal is to our stories and faith and strengthen the family core of our viewers and those around us. So thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you. We see you guys. We will definitely cover a little bit with the Big Ten and stuff. That's interesting because I know that we've had multiple shows discussing on
Right.
college football, most importantly on the return. We saw Notre Dame Duke play last weekend, this Saturday. Interesting seeing how many people were in the stands at Notre Dame, even though Notre Dame is virtual learning right now. So very interesting over there. Uh,
Yeah.
it was weird. It was kind of like first of all, it was an empty Notre Dame stadium. Almost it had people in it, and then people were trying to social distance. It was just eerie, but definitely over capacity. I will say that.
How many people did I? So I didn't see that game. I did see. I think the first game that I saw was the Iowa State game, and they had hardly anyone. Actually, the cheerleaders were not even in the stadium. They were actually remotely outside the stadium cheering. The band was in the stadium, but they were just social distance apart. But it was so interesting, just amazing. But how many people did Notre Dame have? Did they give a number
I
or
don't know. I could. It's weird. It was just very interesting to see Notre Dame football, to see kind of other games. I'm very interested to see when SEC breaks off, when the Big Ten now starts in October. So it's gonna be interesting. I am intrigued because you got a lot of people in the Big Ten. People want to see Ohio State, Michigan, etc. So football is
right?
back. I talked to Devin last night over at Yale. He is bored out of his mind. They can't in the Ivy because they're not having a season. They have not been able to get into facilities and stuff like that. But he is able to, get on the field and try things out like that and do the best they can over there.
So he is. So he is being able to get on the field.
That's what he said. Yeah,
Okay, good. That's good.
yeah. So we'll see. By end of October, I'm sure we'll have a lot more information. We're all gonna be able to discuss it a little bit.
Right,
Um,
right. Well,
and see the result of it too.
right. Well, it's intriguing. I mean, I got a chance to kind of this. So, where are we at? Where are we at today? I mean, Wednesday, and and then what I was doing was putting my notes down. I knew that the Big Ten presidents chancellors were meeting to review everything, but it looks like they have just made the announcement that they will play.
Mhm.
But I'm looking at some of the other programs. LSU football coach Aragon, just said that most of his players have already contracted the virus, and hopefully they're not going to contract it again. But you may look at the Florida Gators. They had 61 new positive cases last week. Uh, some of the programs have been eliminated. Georgia made an announcement that they're going to not allow tailgating. So there seem to be a lot of different ways that some of these universities are navigating. And I think something I told you before the show with these big BCS programs, they have the advantage of having so many players on the team with so much depth, you know. So if a player goes down and he's out for 2 or 3 weeks, they got another player to replace it. So that's going to be really interesting. I know that I did speak to one of the parents from the Big Ten, the Borlands, who their son that we've known since you guys were born and very close with them. But their son, Tuck, is a linebacker for Ohio State. And they were really on pins and needles. There were there was obviously a lot of protests, a lot of people writing in, and it'd be interesting to see if any of the other conferences. I know the other conference that's relatively big is the Pac-12, and you got the MAC, you have a lot of other conferences, and it just seems that every week goes by, there's more and more pressure for some of these other conferences to possibly try to play football. On the flip side of it, in high school football, it's really frustrating here in Illinois. I mean, we're not playing football here in Illinois, but the states surrounding us are playing football. So,
But there's a reason. And you know what?
right,
Here's the thing about college football. When you talk about Power Five institutions, you have the resources to test these kids on a regular basis. You have the resources to get these kids the emergency they need, the medical help they need. In high school, it's on the parents.
right.
It's on the parents. So, I mean, that is a big thing. And all of this is really about liability. All of this is about the repercussion of if a kid gets sick and it goes way left than we want it to go. That is what it's about. You don't want a kid to get really sick or a kid to have long term. And I know we're going to probably see 10 years from now, probably see the effects of this of kids who played during this time period. I hope not. But somehow we'll still be talking about this pandemic and how it affected these kids playing sports. So, I mean, high school, I don't see how you can play. I mean, obviously, AAU has been going on in Texas. Texas has been wide open always. Um, it's just hard to see Illinois doing it because this is on the parents. This is their responsibility to take care of the kid. Their kid gets COVID. I mean, then they bring it home, family, grandparents. I mean, this is a lot. When it comes to high school, it's different with college because you're isolated. You know what I mean? It's not the same as when you're in high school. So
Right, right.
I don't see it happening.
Well, it's really interesting that I know at least 3 or 4 parents that played on the high school team with Devin actually moved to a different state so their kids can play football. One parent moved to Indiana, another parent moved up to Michigan so they can play football. So it's really, without judging. I mean, obviously everybody has a different situation. And of course, what is the liability? Parents
Right.
have to put that in the parents' choice, but they need to be educated and know that what's expected. And so it's going to be it. I would love to have this show 6 months from now and look back on this time
Right.
and see where we were, where we was, and then where we are. I mean, because I could actually see hopefully the state opening up a little bit. Um, I enjoy. I mean, the difference between professional sports right now and college sports is a big difference. There's a big
Right.
difference between college sports and high school sports. It's like you said. I mean, football can control the environment a lot better than football. You know, I'm just really interested to see how college football is going to navigate it because there are going to be cases and how they're going to be able to adapt to it. I guess we really won't know, as you just said, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, how this can actually impact these kids. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I mean, there's a lot of things that are being impacted by everything that's going on. I mean, we see these colleges in football, they're doing virtual learning. But we got to look at, since we're talking about high school, let's talk about Olivia. It's the topic you bring to us. It is the 52nd episode of F3, just a little crazy again. Um, and we can't help but notice the fact that people, now that you're an empty nester, you don't have to deal with it. But people have kids from K through 12 virtual learning, right? I mean, some schools are open in some states, but some are definitely not because it's super hard to get these kids into school safely. I heard a story the other day in New York is a mom sent her kid to kindergarten. He came back with the wrong mask on.
Oh,
And the wrong, he had someone other kid's mask on, and I was like, ugh.
oh my God.
But like, you know what I'm saying? We're not. I mean, it's super hard to get these kids into school and get these kids, and right, because we're all navigating unknown waters right now, right?
Right,
So
right.
I mean, you brought this idea to me. I thought it was a great idea because I have heard a lot about it from. I have friends who are teachers. I have friends who are virtual learning now teachers, um, and their stories are really funny because they got kids and parents. Sometimes parents are they forget the kids or cameras are on, so the parents walk by in their pajamas or something. It's a mess, right? And so that is like the small part of what everything's going on. But when it comes to virtual learning, it's hard not to talk about. I mean, how are we making this happen? How is it working? Obviously, it's a major debate amongst a lot of people, positive, negative, why we need to be in school, why we're not in school. I mean, it's like college football for a lot of these people. So I guess the question is, and what you've asked me and talked to me is, how are parents navigating? I mean, Dad, if you were in this position and you had two kids, what would you do? How would you handle it? How are you? What is your process in this moment?
Well, so again, I think with me, I basically committed, kind of dropped everything I did to focus on you guys. So I would not have had uh, an issue. Actually, you guys would be, okay, Dad, you need to go, right? I mean, I would be there because I have the ability. But like again, what you said, most parents don't have the luxury of being able to stay home.
Right?
Um, but I also, it's a level of parenting responsibility too. There's a core values in placing the importance on education no matter what. You know, I mean, when kids come home, they have to learn. They have to
Right.
continue to study.
Yep.
You know, I mean, they have homework. They have to get on the internet. They have to do their assignment. And so for me, I do understand because of the different socioeconomical reasons, demographics. Um, there are parents, depends on where you're at. Um, you know, I mean, Naperville, Plainfield, but then you look at the Chicago public schools where the whole issue is completely different than you touched on. I mean, here's parents, single parents, um, you know, those issues, connectivity to the internet, not having Chromebook. I mean, uh, I know that you're going to show a video, but interesting enough, they're sitting principals and deans out to track down students.
Yep.
So I don't know if you want to play that right now and kind of segue into it, but that would be a good way to kind of get this started.
Knock on the window,
Amanda!
a shout out through the door. With a list in hand, Daly Academy's principal, assistant principal, and a school security guard are making home visits, looking for students who have yet to show up for school remotely.
The first week of school was really rough. I want to say the biggest issue was us getting students actually on the computers and online.
Attendance at this back of the yard Chicago public school on the first day was only 55%. But through outreach efforts in person and on the phone, Principal Camilla Hampton says attendance is now up to 73%. But with a student population that is almost all low income, many Spanish speaking, getting students devices and online is ongoing.
I would say the challenge is going to be keeping our students engaged, right? We know that they have to be on the computer for a certain amount of time.
That takes me 2 seconds.
It's only been a week, and Sarah Sation says keeping her kids engaged has been tough.
I feel like an overworked, non-paid CPS employee at this point.
Sation has 4 kids. 2 are diverse learners, and while she works with her 10-year-old son one-on-one, Sation's 7-year-old daughter has had enough of screen time for the moment. Meantime, the oldest is upstairs logging into her high school classes.
It's not going very well at all. Not for my family, and I've heard from other families as well that it's a challenge.
Sation feels like CPS or her individual school in the Clearing neighborhood need to come up with a plan that is more innovative to keep kids engaged. During these first few weeks, principals are asking families to be patient while parents are asking schools to let them have a seat at the table when it comes to figuring out the best way for their kids to learn remotely.
Bermuda is open. You are welcome. Enter at GameSetBermuda.com and you can win a trip to the courts and shorts.
What do you think, Dad?
Well, that's the challenge. That's a good cool. But I actually got a chance to speak with local principals. There's one of the schools in the suburb yesterday for about a half hour, and his experience was completely different. I mean, the demographics are different, but he's experienced it. I think there's some anxiety. He also carried football field idea of having a soccer game, and the fact that there was no football game was really frustrating for him. But his situation is right on that. He said most of the kids that go to the school are with about 15 minutes away, and we see that the kids are disengaged by not signing up. He has personally made house calls himself, and of course, deans that are also in the building, they get in their little bands, and the kids need some resources. They need anything. I mean, they've been able to on top of it. But then he's also experiencing what a lot of districts here in the Chicago suburbs. Parents are actually protesting right now because they're so frustrated by not being in school, not participating. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and we talked about this before the show, and that's everybody's opinion. But it's kind of like there's kids out here who don't have Wi-Fi or accessibility to computers or libraries, right? Or even people that can stay home with them and make sure that they're signing in and on their classes for the day. And then we have the other people who just want their kids to go back to school because they want things to go back to normal, or they want, you know what I mean? Like just because you don't see the heaviness of the situation. I think that the reason to go back to school should be because these kids need to learn in general, and they may not have access to resources. Like, obviously, and I liked the idea of, I don't know, it's going to be hard. The more I think about it, it's really hard because you think about how much these kids interact within schools. You think about how hard it's going to be for them not to have lunch, recess, how hard it's going to be for them not to go sit at their friend's desk or socialize, right? And that's in school's a very long time. It's about 7 to 8 hours where they're in this building. So with masks on, and they're kids, right?
Yeah.
But then you look at it the other way and you think about kids sitting at a computer. You have to get restless. You lose focus. It's hard. You lose focus even in the classroom. So I couldn't imagine what some of these parents are dealing with. So I can understand how parents want to go get back to school. I can also understand why parents don't want their kids to be in school. But I think that this all depends really demographically on who the kids are, who the families are, like you said, and where these schools are located. I think every school has to be different. We cannot mandate this as a statewide effect because, I mean, a lot of these people can't afford to stay home, right? I mean, I think one of the biggest things that me and you spoke about was the fact that a lot of parents have to work, right? But a lot of us are going back to work. Like I'm about to go to work after this show. Like if I had kids, what happens to my kids, right? And then now you have these kids with grandparents and or if you don't have grandparents or help, this is what I'm trying to say. This is making it very hard for parents to kind of keep making a living, parents to try to get back to normalcy, and try to take care of their families because now they have to teach as well, right? And parent most of the day. And that's hard to do, right? For people who also have jobs or have been working from home for about 3 to 4 or 5 months. So yeah. I think the main thing I'm thinking about is, and you said this earlier, is navigating it is going to be extremely hard, and everybody is different, like we spoke. I mean, I think it's great that these principals are going out and checking on these kids and make sure these kids are signing in and these kids are, okay. But it's like this is uncharted waters. This is we're treading somewhere we've never been before, and we're trying to make the best out of it. So it's interesting. That is my thing. My biggest thing is just the demographics. Is how hard it's going to be because everybody's situation is different, and not everybody wants their situation to be known. You know what I mean? We spoke about that a little bit. Talk a little bit about that, like what you told me.
Yeah. So he also shared with me, one of the challenges some of the kids were not putting their cameras on,
Yeah.
and to try to get the parents to the administration to mandate that. But he actually, when he was making a house call, it was actually in an apartment, and the mom barely opened the door. He said he just knew that that environment wasn't right. Some of these kids are embarrassed by what people would see in the background. And I guess with the Chromebooks, you can't put a certain background in the background, meaning a virtual background. So, people have visibility to what's going on in the background of these kids' lives. And, that's, this is the whole social aspect of it, Faith. It is so challenging. Because not only socially are they not getting interaction, it's almost like they go to school to escape from what's going on at home.
Yeah.
And then by being at school, they're going to get good interaction. They're going to probably get healthy conversation. They're going to get positive affirmation. They're going to get food. They're going to get a lot. I'm going to talk about every tier of demographics and socioeconomical. Kids need that interaction. So when you take away that interaction, the time between classes, that was your time. Okay, you only had 5 minutes, but you were able to navigate, have a lot of conversation between classes.
Yeah.
Being able to sit in the lunchroom and have fun and connect with your friends. And then let's not even talk about the piece that we then talk about is sports. Not being able to look for it. So we're also talking about kids that have, and I guess we can relatively talk about everything, but for the last 5 or 6 months, it's been going on. They've been isolated.
Right.
And being home with their brothers and sisters, different age range, different academic needs. I mean, I'm just very blessed that we're not going through that. And I know Devin took a couple classes at Yale before he
That he said was easy.
Yeah.
I talked to him yesterday. He was like, "This is easy. Virtual, like this Yale is easy," and I was like, "Yeah."
Right. That was a good. So a good friend, Trisha Pearl, said isolation is not healthy. That's a challenge. Kids need that interaction. We just got to look at it one day at a time. But it is challenging. It is challenging. But let's talk about some of the challenges. Not only connectivity to the internet and keeping kids engaged. I know that a lot of school districts are looking at the hybrid method coming up. There's also a risk to that. I mean, so with all of the pressure, just like the pressure that Big Ten had to play, with all the pressure, how do you see that possibly working? Kids going back with different ways, maybe different classes, maybe sophomores, juniors, seniors doing the block. How do you think that would work? I mean, because there's still going to be certain risk involved, but maybe it's a start.
I think it's a great idea for people who need their kids to get into school, right? Who have no other option. Obviously, for kids who have maybe the resources and stuff like that, I would not, like we spoke before, with our family, we would be home because we had the resources and we were able to kind of also be able to socialize with one another because you'd be at home with us at all the time. We get all your attention. And we were very blessed to have that. But a lot of kids, this would be great for them to alternate maybe one Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and switch next week or have certain classes so that they can see kids, see other people besides the faces in their own home, but also receive like the one-on-one attention they need to grow, to develop within their education. That's one of the things. Every child's learning experience is different. Every child learns different, right? Um, some learn faster, some learn visual, some learn by hearing, right? So it's hard for, and some learn within healthy classroom competitive competition, right? And that's hard for a lot of kids now when they're on their own and all their interaction is through the computer. Every child is different, so the ability for them to kind of go in and still kind of get a little bit of normalcy would, I think, is a great idea. It's a step in the right direction, um, towards giving these kids a little bit of what they need. Obviously, we can't go full go. I think that is going to be way too complicated, way too hard, and we don't have the answers for any of that, nor the resources for any of that. Um, but I think the hybrid method and the block is a cool idea, and definitely something that is kind of keeping people safe, but also kind of giving these kids the mental clarity that they need for their education. What about you?
Well, I think it's a start, but here's some of the frustrations that some of the parents are having. So you talk about the interaction and being able to communicate, the inability to communicate effectively with their teachers. The technology is not working. They get emails. Parents are getting pressure because a kid missed an assignment. The kid didn't really mean to miss an assignment. They probably couldn't log on effectively. I mean, so if all things were seamless and everything was working, that probably would eliminate a lot of frustration, but that still exists. Because parents are having a very difficult time. Not very many. There's a lot of parents are not that technical, and so those are some of the things that happen. That parents are frustrated with.
I mean, could you imagine? Here's the thing: education evolves every single year, right? Every year it changes. Math gets harder. They find a new, um, whatever algorithm or whatever. They change the books up, right? And it's hard. Parents are balancing their own workload, their own stuff, but they also probably have 2 to 3 kids. The average family in the United States of America is the nuclear family. So two kids, and a lot of people 2 to 4, right? Plus to get there, and so now these parents have to balance all of this plus their workload. And so the question is, who picks? Which parent gets to stay home? Which parent now has to help them with their math? And it's like, homework was hard to begin with, but now you have to deal with all the subjects. When you're there, you have to listen and you try to figure it out, and it's got to be frustrating. Like, we watched the mom in the video.
Right.
She was struggling. She was like, I have 4 kids. The kids don't like it. They're not engaged in the online learning because it's not a video game. This is a computer where to sit and listen to someone talk. Comparison to being in a classroom around other kids who kind of like, you know what I mean? It's a community. It's hard if you feel the feeling of community on a laptop.
Right.
It's hard. And I'm sure parents are losing their minds.
Well, I can tell you what I would have had an issue with. If it was a topic about history, there was nothing that you were doing that I was able to help you with, other than making sure that you were doing it.
Right.
I mean, that's the challenge. Parents are not teachers.
Right.
What?
They got to do gym class. They have to do history class, right? It's a lot to do. And then
gym class, I've been okay with that.
Gym class is no longer on the doctorate for virtual learning. They don't do the thing. But these kids are sitting. Here's my thing. I saw a video of a kid who's watching and he can't sit still. He's just sitting there. And there's a lot of kids that are that way. And it's like teachers originally are able to walk by and put their hand on the kid's shoulder or the kid's desk. And then that's a sign for the kid to sit still. Now parents are starting to see visibility to how their kids are and the way they move within classrooms or having to sit still. They're not able to do that. And that's got to drive them crazy because it's like, how do I keep these kids engaged into something that really isn't that engaging? And how are these teachers doing it? I mean, that's got to be crazy. So it's way too complicated for us to try to find a solution. But I think that, well, here's another thing. There's kids that are in kindergarten, first, second grade on these Zoom calls. And here's my thing. You learn color, you learn numbers, you learn animals, but it's like on a Zoom, it's hard. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't imagine being a kindergarten or first grade teacher doing virtual learning right now. The parent needs to be sitting at the table.
Right.
You can't leave them in the living room with the laptop. Like, they're not gonna engage or hear anything. You have to be involved. So for parents like that, that has to be extremely hard. Like, they need to be in the classroom with a professor or a teacher in order for them to grow and develop. Or else it's on you to pull out the flashcards and all that stuff, especially in that age group.
Right.
With the high schoolers, it's easy because they'll sit still. Oh, the big thing with them is they'll be bored.
Right.
That's what we're starting to learn with them. But the young kids, I can see how this is extremely hard. It's a lot of responsibility and weight on the shoulders of parents during this period.
Are we at a point, and this is what I'm hearing when I was listening to some of the protests, are we at a point where the risk of not going to school outweighs the pandemic?
No, because people can die. But you know what I mean? At the end of the day, like, here's something that we spoke about. I had a friend who's a teacher, and they had kids come to school and then take it home to family. And a lot of families in America have grandparents that live with them. They have aunts, uncles. They go see these people on the weekends when they can because we've been isolated for so long. They want to see family. And these kids are bringing COVID or taking COVID home. And it's like, this is a lot. This is bigger than we could start back up again, right? This is how you get hotspots again. This is how, like, New York right now is debating. I think they are in-person school, but obviously it can't last that long. But the reasoning is because these kids can't, like, a lot of schools, like, they're apartment living. Two, that's not a lot of space to move around in. The school provides at least some space for them to change scenery. Two, they need the resources that come from a school, and they need the one-on-one attention. Or also, parents are working. So, no, most of it actually, parents are working in New York. So it's just, well, what do you think?
That's a challenge, Faith. I mean, how we are combating this disease is isolation, social distancing, taking those kind of precautions, a lot of testing. See, that's the advantage that the kid in college has.
Yeah.
Right? But we can't test kids in middle school, elementary school, high school. So they could be asymptomatic and come home and spread it. So that's the challenge right now. I mean, if you look at the numbers for Illinois, Governor Pitzer, he's basically saying, no, our numbers are not where they need to be. So I know these other states are playing football, but, our numbers are not where they need to be for me to feel comfortable to pull that trigger.
Right.
I'm sorry?
So that's exactly what it is. It's a heavy decision.
Right.
Like, these are kids' lives. These are families' lives. This impacts every single person. I think that's what we are all understanding, and I think we all agree with that. What's a great question is the child's education outweigh the pandemic? And I think that should be a person's choice. You know what I mean? Here at my school, is they have the Zoom set up, but they also have kids in classroom. So, but my kids have been saying, well, we can't even see the professor sometimes on the Zoom, or they don't know how to set up the Zoom, and it's just like, it's just the issues that come with.
So yeah, it is difficult a little bit. There you are.
Yeah.
So I think, as we navigate, this is pretty similar to everything that's going on in our lives right now. We are uncharted waters, school-wise, work-wise, athletic-wise. We're all going through the same thing. How are we dealing with this until we get a vaccine? Which I don't see kind of happening anytime soon. Maybe 6 months to a year out. When we know more about how this thing spreads. We know it spreads, but I would be, and I was telling Devin, I'd be very concerned about, with my age. I think I'm in pretty good shape, but I would be concerned about sending you or Devin to school and then you coming back home.
Yes.
Knowing that you were exposed to somebody or a family that may not be as responsible. because you don't know where they went, and that's
And
a hard thing. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, and I just want to agree with you. Is that you there's responsible people who are getting it, whether it's through groceries or whether it's through pizza boxes or just trying to do the right thing. The gas station, right? Places you have to go to survive, and it just accidentally happens, right? And here's the thing: anybody can be healthy and still struggle with the coronavirus, right? You can be young and fit, and we've seen people die from being young and fit. Like it's and or even they still have symptoms 40 days after beating the virus, right? So it's very scary that we don't know. We don't know enough about it. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I don't work on school board. I do because
Right.
it's hard to make a decision. It's hard to pull something together to try to explain because it's life or death, and then it's the development of a child's brain, right? And it's just kind of like it's hard when it comes to kids, the youth.
Right.
You want them to have the opportunity to grow. You want them to have opportunities to develop their minds and get the opportunities they deserve, but also get the shelter they need, the safe haven, the space they need. That's what schools provide. But also, is you don't want to put them or their families in danger. So it's hard. It is
Right.
hard.
You know, another challenge that we need to talk about is how the political environment is influencing people's view on the importance, the seriousness, or not seriousness of this virus, and it's driven a lot of people to, okay, this is not, the numbers are not what the numbers are. We don't have 200,000 people that died directly of COVID. I mean, the numbers are not true. So
That's what
that
people are saying. That's what people are saying.
right, that influence, what we see on media, what we hear. Unfortunately, there's a political dynamic here that is formulating the opinions and the mindset of how people view this virus. And it translates into the family decisions that they make, right? I mean, you look at different demographics here in Chicago, I can tell you the school districts that are probably more on the right than more on the left, that, you can see them they don't really care, and then vice versa. So that's something that is unfortunate. Dr. Bashi said the same thing. It's unfortunate that that's kind of formulating, how people do. I mean, me personally, it's real. It's real. It just scares me to death, and I'm taking precautions, and I am listening to. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm listening to you,
What were you
but
gonna say?
as someone who's in New York, I've seen it all, and I've seen how bad it's gotten, and it's
Right.
really bad here, and that's why we still have no indoor dining. That's why we still don't have gyms are just now slowly opening up to 30%. That is why, because people were being carried out of hospitals in body bags and put into semi trucks, because that's how many people were dying on a daily. And the issue is that other countries and states and people didn't have visibility to that and didn't see it. But in New York, we saw it and we felt it, and almost so many people died in spans where it was like on a daily to what it is, right? Where bodies are being buried in parks. People don't understand how bad it was here. And that's why we see places like Atlanta and Florida, and people are opening up, and it's like here in New York, we are at 1% infection rate. We are low, low, low because we are not open at all, right? And everybody, we wear our mask when we walk outside. Like, we're outside, we have our mask on. We walk inside, we have our mask on. The only time I don't have my mask on is when I'm in my personal home. So it is very serious here, and it's very scary. And we're still debating on if kids are going to person or not. But it's because New York understands is they can't have kids at home because not every kid, because there's so many people in New York and everybody's working, not every kid has accessibility to be virtual learning. And that is why New York is trying to go back to school, but it's not going to work because you can't have all these kids in school. So
What you said was just powerful. I think that goes across all the things that are going on with our country. Unless it impacts you, unless you live in those shoes, unless you've experienced it, unless you have that lens on that, okay, it's going to be very, very different on how you perceive it, how you react to it.
care.
You know,
Yeah.
so and
It's
that's
definitely-
something that relatively speaking, we talk about what's going on with injustice, what's going on. I mean, you know, unless you experience it, unless you have walked in those shoes, and unless you saw those body bags, right? I remember how fast you got out of New York. I mean, because that not only did it scare you, but it scared me to death, right? So, that was enough. That was enough closeness to it for me to understand that this is a very serious thing that we don't have a pulse on how to navigate this, other than doing what the scientists say.
doing the best we can with this listening. And realizing that it's not none of this is in our control, and that's okay. But a lot of people struggle with the ability to not have control. That is, I think, something that's very American.
Interesting.
And that's why we are way behind other countries. But we are a first world country that's operating as a third world, who still doesn't provide free Wi-Fi. So, not a surprise. We're behind the 8 ball. But a lot of issues that you kind of see is why we are struggling is because we are missing a lot of key evolution within how we operate in this country.
Right.
We could write a lot of notes on seeing other countries and how they operate and how their government operates, because they're doing quite well. So, but I think this was a great discussion.
Right. Well, I thought it was something that we should talk about. Is again, what was going on in football is kind of what's happening in our world, and it kind of transitions to kids going to school, because it's all the same type of unknown challenges, and it's going to be an ongoing conversation. And I just pray to God that we figure out a way to move forward. But I'm glad you were receptive to having this topic.
Yeah, it's so key, and I think in the next couple of weeks, just like college football, just like college sports, just like colleges in general, and how fast that stuff shut down or opened up, I think we're going to be seeing some more things with virtual learning, because I don't see parents lasting for much longer. So I couldn't imagine. But again, thank you again for joining us this Wednesday morning. We're so thankful for this talk with about virtual learning and all the other stuff that's happening. Thank you, Amazon Fire, YouTube, Facebook, Roku, Apple TV, and most importantly, our key platform out of Phoenix, Arizona, E360 TV. Again, this is Faith Family Focus, and it is our goal to help use our faith as a vehicle to help heal and sustain others and strengthen their family core. And of course, our new slogan and our only lovely slogan: let go, let God, let go, let faith, let go, let love. Everyone have a great Wednesday, and we'll see you guys on Friday.